Good morning, everyone. It's right at 8:30, and I think we'll go ahead and get started as participants continue to join our webinar today. Welcome. I'm Londa Dewey. I'm the CEO of the QTI Group, and the QTI Group's been in business in Wisconsin for 68 years. We're in the staffing, recruiting, and compensation consulting business. And every year, we're really proud to host a survey and share the results as well as a little bit of advice around that. So I just want to say thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us today and to join us. And we hope through the presentation as well as a panel discussion that it really sparks maybe a nugget of a new idea for you as and help you as you plan for 2026. So our agenda today is to talk about the HR Trends Survey. We will go through the top three challenges, as you can see on the agenda. We will move to a panel discussion. We will have poll questions throughout the presentation today. And then after the panel discussion, if you have questions that we have not responded to, then we will give you some instructions in terms of how to submit those questions, and we will make sure that they get answered. So, about the survey. First of all, this great quote, the future of work, if you can go to the next slide, please. The future of work isn't about jobs, it's about people. And we in HR must shift from managing employees to enabling human potential. And now we'll talk about the survey. QTI has hosted the survey for over 15 years, and Wisconsin businesses are the participants in the survey. And as you can see, the survey participants go across industries where about a third of the participants are manufacturers. From an ownership type perspective, again, we go across different ownership structures, and we have very few publicly traded companies in our survey data. From an organization size perspective, again, we go across organization size. So now let's get into what are those top three HR challenges for 2026. Number one is attracting the right talent. Number two is enhancing employee engagement. And three is improving leadership development. And what's interesting is last year, same number one, attracting the right talent. And we will dive into that a little bit more. But also, what's interesting is enhancing employee engagement last year was number six. So it's grown in terms of its challenge. And the same with improving leadership development. And last year, there were challenges around total rewards, compensation, and succession, and those have all fallen in challenge. So if you move to the next slide, we'll get right into the discussion around attracting the right talent to help your organization soar. So this was the number one HR challenge, and 83% of our HR Trend Survey participants ranked it as the top challenge in 2026. Why? Well, our survey participants said it's because of the competitive market, skill shortages, and compensation and benefits. And we'll dive into each of these topics. Let's start with the competitive market. This is a chart that shows on the blue line the percentage of survey participants that list applicant attraction as a challenge. In 2021, it was not the number one challenge. And as we think back to 2021, that kind of makes sense with the pandemic. And the bottom line that's red is unemployment. So you can see as unemployment is dropping and hanging around 3%, applicant attraction continues to be a top challenge. And so let's go into that a little bit deeper. 58% of our survey participants say they're not satisfied with the quality of candidates. So you might be getting candidates, but not necessarily the quality of candidates that you're looking for. And if you go to the next slide, we ask questions about current regulations. And what we learned is our HR Trends Survey participants report that these regulations have had a limited impact on their own organizations. 71% say that global and cross-border workforce regulations have had no impact on their organization's ability to attract or retain talent. 75% say they don't employ individuals on work visas, and 87% report that they're not hiring talent outside of the US for US-based roles. And if you go to the next slide, I think this one is super interesting because if you look at unemployment rate by educational attainment, you can see that the higher level of education, the lower the unemployment rate. And you contrast that with the most critical roles needed, leadership and executive, sales and business, development, project management, and engineering roles. Those roles require a high level of education. So the most critical roles that people are recruiting for are in high demand, whereas the unemployment rate with those roles is very low. If you go to the next slide, we want to talk a little bit about workforce demographics and how they are shifting. 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 years or older by the year 2030. 18% of the workforce currently working is age 65 and older, and there are 5 generations working side by side in the workforce, each generation bringing its own experience. If you go to the next slide, it talks a little bit more about the generations in the workforce and the percentage of each generation, and also the Gen Alphas are coming and future workforce. But if you think of a generation, it's really the creation of shared experiences, the things that happened, the things you all did and listened to and read and went through, and as importantly, it's the things that did not happen. So if you think of the baby boomers, everybody experienced the Vietnam War or Gen Y, 9/11, and the internet. And that helps to frame what the thought processes are and what those folks in that generation bring to the workforce. So, for example, the boomers started their career with no voicemail, no cell phone, no email, and Gen Z has only known the world of technology. So, each generation brings a beautiful set of experiences into the workforce, and it's really important to embrace that and understand that and try to get the most of bringing those generations together. And as you look at the next slide, we talk a little bit about retirement. And in our survey, 40% of our HR participants expect 5 to 10% of their employees will retire in the next 3 years. And so with that, knowledge walks out the door. But to me, what's interesting with that is you can plan for retirement. And hopefully people will let you know before they retire. And if you move to the next slide, we have some solutions to think about this. One is when retirement does occur, it's time to really review that job description. Things are changing so fast in our workforce today and in our jobs today that it's important to possibly rewrite that job description or think about what skills you need to hire for the future. Also, develop a succession plan. You should develop a succession plan when somebody announces their retirement, but also for all key employees. And when I think about succession planning, the way I like to do it is looking at performance and potential and slot your employees in a 9 box. And then from that, determine who's really ready for new roles right now, who might be ready in the next 1 to 3 years with some specific development activities, and who might be ready in the future. Then, with your employees, discuss their goals, discuss their desires, and then develop a plan for those employees to progress and really work hard at retaining those key employees. And remember, a career path is really a jungle gym. It's not necessarily a straight line. So, those variety of experiences can really bring a lot into a role as people are progressing through an organization. So that way you can identify and develop internal candidates, and you can also identify where you might have gaps and where you want to recruit externally. And you might want to recruit externally for your bench and develop that talent, or you might want to recruit externally for a key role. And when we partner at QTI with HR teams, we find that HR teams often have the capability to recruit on their own. They just don't have the time. And there are so many unqualified candidates, as we saw in an earlier slide, that apply for positions. And it's important to treat all applicants with respect. Those applicants might have family members in the business. They might be a child of one of your clients. It's just important to treat them all with respect because that really helps your brand. So when we partner with HR, we look to reduce the amount of time, think about the skills, experience, and the cultural fit, and only send those really well vetted candidates for consideration. Also, you can ask your best employees for referrals. And also, what I think about in addition to hiring for talent, experience, and skills, hire for the 5 A's: attitude, agility, alignment, aptitude, and ability. And when you find somebody that has those characteristics, they can develop in so many different ways. If you go to the next slide, compensation in the past was a high challenge. It was number two in last year's survey. This year, number four. 70% of the survey participants said that meeting higher compensation benefits and total reward demand is a moderate to significant challenge going into 2026. So as we think about that, one question we asked our participants is about, how they think about compensation. And the top answer was 47% of the HR survey participants report paying a living wage as the most prevalent compensation practice, and that actually increased 5% over the past year. If you go to the next slide, when I think about compensation, it's way more than just base pay and bonus. Base pay and bonus are critically important, but also benefits, culture, flexibility, perks, and the work. And if you look at benefits, benefit costs are rising for all of us. And many organizations, on an annual or even more often basis, take the time to ask their employees what benefits are important to you to ensure that they're investing in the benefits that the employees care about. And that might be different by generation, but also it's just really important to understand that to make sure you're putting your dollars to work where people care. Culture is critically important. Once you pay people enough, they care more about culture, flexibility, and all the time they care about the work that they have the privilege to do. And if you go to the next slide, once you have identified your total reward strategy, it's great to communicate it. 43% of our respondents stated they have implemented or plan to implement total reward statements. And on the right, you can see an example of a total reward statement where you show the employee, here were your wages over the past year, here's the amount of your bonus, and here's what our business invests in your benefits, whether it's a 401k, health insurance, or other benefits. In addition to that, in the middle of the page, it says a wow fact. In this case, it was 14%, and that's one of my favorites. That's the amount that the organization is paying you not to work. It's how much they pay you for your paid time off. So total reward statements are a great way to communicate all the organization is doing for an employee. If we move to the next slide, you can see that we asked a question about base pay increase budgets. And in 2026, the median was 3%, and that reflects no change from the median increase reported in 2025. You can see across industries that median is a bit different, but overall, it's 3%. I've seen some surveys that are on a national basis recently that suggest that 3 to 3.5% is really the range that people are seeing in increased budgets. But in Wisconsin, our businesses are reporting 3%. So there is an increased focus in ensuring pay equity across demographic groups. 62% of the participants in the survey report that they're benchmarking compensation to ensure pay equity across the groups, and 42% of the participants report that they're doing regular pay audits. Pay equity is paying employees with similar job functions, similar wages, regardless of their identity. And I think that there is an increase in pay equity efforts because there's a more of a desire for additional pay transparency. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable that you are paying equitably before you move into more transparency around pay. And voluntary turnover, we all know that it is costly. And if you move to the next slide, 47% of our survey participants report the turnover similar to the prior year, although 20%, there was at least 20% of voluntary turnover, the businesses indicated that that increased from 14 to 18%. So what I'm seeing here is that it's similar or increasing in terms of voluntary turnover, although there's a new strategy that's coming down the pike, and it's called, next slide. Oh, first, why are employees leaving? And then I'll get to, why don't we go back to that one? So why are employees leaving? They're leaving for several reasons. These are the reported reasons: career development, retirement, compensation, relocation, and work-life balance. And when I dig into this a little bit, I think career development is another code word for I want to progress in my career and I want to get paid more. And so that kind of ties into compensation. Retirement's something certainly we can plan for. And I think relocation and work-life balance is all about flexibility and hybrid work, which obviously we've all learned about since the pandemic. Now we'll go into something, a new trend that we're seeing, and it's called job hugging. It's an employee holding on to their job for dear life due to market uncertainty. And what's interesting about that is you want to make sure that the right employee are hugging their jobs. So our survey says voluntary turnover is increasing, although this is an emerging trend across the country where people are hanging on to their jobs for a variety of reasons, mostly because of market uncertainty. As you go to the next slide, we'll move on to the topic of AI and talent attraction. 93% of Fortune 500 CHROs have begun integrating AI tools and technologies to enhance business practices. And what are some of the ways they're using AI? It's to customize job descriptions, AI platforms to identify and engage talent before the job search, AI-powered interviews, machine learning algorithms, predictive analytic tools. And as you go to the next slide, I love this quote by Rimsey, who is the director of UW School of Computer Data and Information Sciences. And he says the term AI is actually older than computer science. The term AI was actually came to life in the late 1950s, but the idea couldn't advance until there was computing power and speed to carry it out. And as we know, the computing power has continued to grow exponentially, so AI is growing exponentially. On the next slide, you can see that it's important to keep the human in AI. AI is certainly reshaping the workforce, but not necessarily replacing people. It's just changing jobs, enhancing roles, transforming roles. It's really used as a productivity tool. And as leaders, what's important for us? It's new for everyone, but we need to be clear about the organization's vision for AI. We need to set and communicate expectations on use, risk, data privacy, and accuracy, what to look for in accuracy, and then work and learn side by side with your team and share use cases and learn together. So in our survey, roughly there was an equal percentage of participants that are saying that they're using AI tools in HR and those that are not. However, 63% of survey participants reported having no formal oversight of employees using AI tools, and 54% say they're likely to expand AI in HR. So we're at an early stage in the implementation of AI in HR. So this is our first poll question, and that is if you could go into if you could answer the question, how extensively is your organization utilizing AI in the recruitment process? Okay, this is super interesting. It says 45% are just starting, 38% as needed, and then 18% it's part of our everyday processes. It's very similar to the results that we saw in the survey. Well, thank you. Let's move on now to our second HR challenge, which is attracting strong talent begins with strong employee engagement. As we know, strong employee engagement leads to a strong employment brand, and an employment brand is really the promise of the experience of an employee working in an organization. 74% of the HR Trends respondents rated enhancing employee engagement as a moderate to significant challenge in 2026. And when employees really understand an organization's purpose and direction and mission, they tend to be more motivated and engaged. And how much of our time do we spend talking about the purpose, direction, and mission? It's so important. And while employees are hugging their jobs, as we talked about, that doesn't mean necessarily that they are engaged. So let's dive into employee engagement a little bit further. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this hierarchy of needs that Gallup put together related to employee engagement. And it really starts with the employee thinking about their basic needs. What do I get? Their individual contribution is what do I give? Teamwork, do I belong? And then growth, how do I grow? And there are 12 elements of employee engagement. But as leaders, we think about developing a great culture because engaged employees give their discretionary effort, produce more revenue, give better service, meet quality standards, move our organizations forward, and they stay. So, how do we create that attractive culture? It's really developing a people first culture where every employee feels cared for and respected, not only from their supervisor, but also from their peers. Blending technology and automation with a compassionate approach, encouraging leaders to join the teams for activities, and having meaningful conversations to show that you care, especially with hybrid and remote workers, and make employees feel seen, heard, and connected, and provide those development opportunities, those career development opportunities, because that continues to be a top resignation reason. And recognizing and engaging a new term that is called the glue employee. And that's a team member who multiply everyone's effort and results by helping the team win. And your glue employees are quiet leaders. They anticipate needs, they take action, they help the team to be better. Their priority is progress and the team win, not attention. So, how do you identify these folks? Maybe in an interview, they'll describe how they helped a team, how they help coordinate many moving pieces, maybe how they were a mentor. And ask your team, who helps you the most? Who watches out for you? If you turn to the next slide, how do we recognize these folks? They don't always show up in the metrics, but those glue behaviors are so important from an employee engagement perspective. So maybe create a glue award or provide those team awards to recognize everyone who plays a role in the success of the team beyond the traditional metrics. This slide is pretty interesting as we move into the topic of remote work because 45% of our HR Trend Survey participant report challenges with maintaining culture and engagement with remote work or hybrid work. But on the right side, you see when you survey workers, they say, I'm more productive at home, I have a more improved work-life balance, and I would be less likely to apply for a job without remote options. So, what do we do about that mismatch? Well, here are some strategies to improve engagement with a remote or hybrid workforce. What I think about is what are we missing out with those hallway conversations with employees, those interactions that don't happen when somebody's remote? And make sure that you incorporate those elements into your regular check-ins. So go beyond business in those check-ins and make sure that they happen regularly and sometimes in person as well as virtually. Strong communication is more important than ever, both as an organization and one-on-one through multiple channels. Events are great, providing the teams always love coming together, forming relationships, renewing relationships, as well as understanding what each other is working on and doing, celebrating successes, and also having clarity around your remote and hybrid strategy and accountability as well around that policy. If you move on, we think about the deskless worker. There are roles where remote work is not an option: manufacturing, lab science, healthcare. And if you move to the next page, I think as leaders, one of the things that we have an accountability to do is to think about how we accommodate the needs of these deskless workers and how can we infuse flexibility beyond remote work, maybe through scheduling or shift swapping, or maybe some benefits or some career pathing. There may be other creative ideas that you can think of to not leave out this part of the workforce when we think about flexibility. So now we come to another poll question. How often does your organization survey employees for feedback and measure engagement? And while you're answering that poll question, which is about to come up, I'll just make a comment about employee surveys. And that is one thing that's super important is to share the results. Share the results widely, and then hold team discussions so you can really understand what's behind those results. Build action plans to commit to what you want to start doing, stop doing, continue doing, and then empower teams. Everything is not an action that the management needs to take, but oftentimes teams may need to make commitments to each other to improve engagement. Interestingly, the top answer is yearly surveys at 43%, followed by biannual and as needed at 18 and 19%. So very, very interesting that you are all doing surveys on mostly on a yearly basis. So the third HR challenge is effective leadership, and it's essential to a thriving workplace. So the challenge is characterized as improving leadership development, and 71% of our HR Trend survey participants report improving leadership development as a moderate to significant challenge. So evolving leadership skill sets include a stronger focus on helping employees grow, achieve purpose and fulfillment. And we've kind of talked about that a bit as we talked about engagement, caring for your employees' well-being, and creating a positive work experience, especially now in this hybrid environment. At QTI, we often are asked about developing leaders. And so we lean into the Hogan family of leadership assessments. Hogan is a worldwide tool. It's been around since the 1950s. It's validated, and they offer a variety of different tools. And we have a few folks that are certified to be assessors. For leaders, there's a couple tools that we use the most, and one is a Hogan 360, one is a leadership forecast series, and another one is a high potential Hogan report. With the Hogan 360, that's a multi-rater feedback tool. It designs for leaders to understand how their peers, managers, and direct reports view their performance. But it's pretty neat because it looks at self-management, relationship management, working in and on the business. And the tool recommends having a number of raters so that there's a variety of people that provide that feedback. And when you pair it with the leadership forecast, which is a tool that the individual takes about themselves, the results are around what the person is like normally, their bright side, what their reputation is, their dark side, which is if they overuse their strengths or if they're under stress, and then what's inside, what motivates that leader, what are their values. And if you pair the two together, it really provides a holistic picture and allows a leader to put together an action plan. How can I develop? How can I leverage my strengths? What else do I need to do to adapt to be the most effective leader that I can be? So as you move to the next page, it's so important to develop leaders and have engaged leaders, because if managers are disengaged, their teams are too. 70% of a team engagement is attributable to the manager. So there's a lot of responsibilities that goes with leaders and managers, and engagement is certainly one of them, and self-engagement is one of them. So today we have our third poll, which is, what is the primary development tool your organization uses? Well, thanks for participating with this. It looks like workshops and seminars and one-on-one coaching, pretty much 40%, 36% are the top answer, with personality assessments and none of the above following with that. Well, there are many, many approaches to leadership development, and the most important thing is to think about it and identify what works best for your organization. So we've talked about the top three challenges: attracting the right talent. And under that, we talked about the competitive environment, the global workforce, talent mismatch, demographics, retirement, 5 generations in the workforce. We talked about talent attraction solutions, compensation with a median planned forecast of a 3% increase. We talked about pay equity, total rewards, voluntary turnover, job hugging, and AI and HR. Our second challenge of enhancing employee engagement, we talked about why that's important, the 12 elements in the hierarchy of needs related to employee engagement, creating an attractive culture, the glue employee, engagement in remote work, and finally, improving leadership development through assessment tools and how leaders really drive engagement. So with that, I am so excited to introduce to you our panelists today. We have Patty from WPS. We have Kim with DRM, and we have Michelle with Findorf. And they are all incredible HR professionals. So with that, I'm going to start asking them questions, and they will be responding, and then I'm sure that they will build on each other's answers. So the first question I'm going to ask is with Kim. And Kim, what talent attraction strategies have been most effective for your organization?
Sorry, get myself on speaker here. Um, for DRM, and I'll answer this with my previous employer in mind as well. But talent strategies have been, I think, a challenge for everyone. The traditional means that we've used in the past to look for talent haven't always worked like they used to. People aren't reading the newspaper. People aren't necessarily always listening to the radio anymore. So, how do you expand after that? I think we use a lot of job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, and I think probably a majority of employers probably still are using those types of things, as well as their own employee website as well. I think employee referrals have changed over the years. Getting that friend or that family member to join you at your work, and then reaping that benefit of that. Even retention bonuses for those new employees as well. I think I at least for me, I think I've seen a resurge of like job fairs and career fairs. Those were kind of a thing of the past during COVID. They really halted, weren't happening. But thinking about how you can maximize those events more. So, for example, if you have a third shift opening, do the job fair on third shift. It sounds crazy for everybody that has to participate in that, but if that's where the candidate is going to be coming from, I think you have to think outside the box, or think out of the norm, and really shift your thoughts a little bit, and maybe focus on something like that. The other things that I could come up with too is looking at other opportunities that maybe we aren't thinking of. So things like advertising on a bus, on the outside of the bus, on the inside of the bus. That's just downtime for people, that they're not, they're just sitting in those cases. So maybe that's where you can kind of spawn someone's ideas. Maybe you host either a community event at your business, or even a professional event, maybe not having to do anything with your business, but that way you get a different set of eyes in the business. And maybe they're not looking for a position, but maybe they know somebody who's looking for a position.
Kim, those are all fantastic ideas. And I think it's a great example where you can't just do one thing. You have to
Right.
do a multitude of things to attract the kind of talent that you want in today's environment. Michelle, this next question is for you. What types of roles are you seeing the biggest mismatch between skills needed and talent available, and how are you overcoming that challenge at Findorf?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing that comes to mind is probably with our craft workforce. So obviously we're a construction company, and all of the survey data that y'all did show that there's more work available than we have workers. So we are signatory to 6 unions, and so we work really closely with our union halls, but they are also quite empty right now. So we put a lot of focus on getting to people earlier in life to really start to create interest. So, getting into schools earlier, all the way starting back into grade school. So, we want to create excitement around the trades. I think not only with the students, but also with the parents. I think they're um, oftentimes going into the trades is not the first thing that comes to mind for kiddos that are graduating. And so we also know that it's important to get parents engaged in the process too. So we do a lot of school events, elementary school, grade school, high schools. We also put a lot of weight into our apprenticeship. So we currently have, I think, about 180 apprentices. So we have a lot of learners right now, and that couldn't be possible without having really strong tenured employees as well. So mentorship is a big piece of that. We do youth apprentices. So in lieu of like a high school class, they get real-time experience on the job, they get paid for it, and then they kind of get to, you know, quote unquote, try it before they buy it. And then on the office side, our strongest pipeline is really with our co-ops and our interns through the schools. So anywhere from 50 to 75 students, student learners, so co-ops and interns a year, and that truly is, those are our biggest pipelines that we have. So really just getting people excited about the industry.
That's exciting. And you have done a fabulous job with your apprentice program as well as your internships. Do you have a metric about how many of those apprentices or interns end up being hired on full time?
Yeah, I mean, it ebbs and flows, but I would say, I mean, over 50%. So, like I
That's
said, that is a
incredible.
really large pipeline for us. Same on the office side with our co-ops and our interns.
That's incredible. That's a lot of work, but it sounds like it's paying off. I'm going to switch topics a little bit. Patty, the next question is for you, and it's about AI and HR. How are you using AI to create efficiencies in your HR practice, Patty?
Yeah, thank you. There are a number of ways that we are using HR AI in HR. I like to think of it as a thought starter. So job descriptions, policy practice documents, training plans, communications. We're using it for first drafts. Notice I say first draft because there definitely needs to be a people component in review for accuracy or contextualizing things. We, of course, don't put private information in AI. So, what are getting jump started and then having the person actually do the review and finalization of the document? It has saved us, I would say, on our HR team, at least one FTE, if not a little bit more.
That's fantastic. So really building capacity, saving resources, and making those parts of the jobs that you don't love to do a lot easier.
Yeah.
But the human part of it is super important, and I can't agree more. So Michelle, I'll ask you an AI follow-up question, and that is what HR tech innovations are you most excited about or already implementing?
Yeah, so I was just going to add to Patty a lot of the similar things. Interesting enough, we like a good whiteboard session here at Findorf as well. And obviously the confidential private information we don't put in there, but I did try out probably about a month ago when we were doing some org design stuff, put in a picture of a whiteboard session and said, like, make sense of this. And what it spit out was amazing. So you talk about time saving. I never thought that they could read all of that chicken scratch on a board. So I thought that that was pretty amazing. But already excited about or already implementing. So we're using AI with, some of our recruiting practices. So interview scheduling, automated onboarding workflows, a lot of research. Our employee surveys is using AI pieces to do more employee sentiments and compiling information. But I'm super excited just about continuing to explore more of the predictive analytics, really with like reporting and really looking out. So I think we have a good idea of where things are at today, but how amazing, especially from a talent perspective, to be able to use that predictive analytics to see where do we need to be in 1 year or 5 year. I also think with attrition modeling, so to be able to see which employees are at a higher risk of leaving based on specific factors. I think that that's really amazing too, just for business planning.
Yeah, those are all incredible ideas in terms of how to use AI. And I think a year from now, when we talk about this again, it'll be interesting to see how that list builds. I'm going to turn our attention to pay transparency and communication. And Kim, this question is for you. What approaches are working best to help managers communicate compensation decisions effectively?
Sure. I think an issue that we've been trying to manage is that pay compression. As we continue to say new hires need a higher starting rate, it's not like you can just automatically apply that same increase to all your existing employees as well. And therefore, we just create a continued compression challenge. So trying to figure out other ways that we can, possibly address pay issues. So for example, I know in a maintenance employee group, we've tried to start paying employees based on their skill level testing. So all employees can complete additional training and additional skills level testing, plus a visual observation of by their management team to sign off that they can actually perform those types of new challenges. And then if those all pass, then they get bumped to a different next to the next pay level. So onto that advancement piece. But trying to figure out how to apply different options for employees besides just bonuses and incentives and those types of things. It just continues to be a challenge, I think, as long as that compression exists. We review that on an annual basis. We try to review, where everyone sits from a competitive standpoint with other markets. But I think it's just definitely something that we're going to have to continue to look at. And right now, we don't have a policy around pay transparency, and I think that's something that we'll have to look at going forward. It's just making more of a conscious effort to set that goal and strive to that goal.
It sounds like you're doing a great job and just really analyzing the pay. And the pay compression was really a big deal coming out of the pandemic. And now I think a lot of organizations have focused on that and dealt with that. And now thinking about now communication is really important. So those are all fabulous examples. Thank you very much. I'm going to move now to flexibility, remote, and hybrid. And I'll start with Patty. How has your organization's remote and hybrid policy evolved over the past years?
Yeah, a couple of things. When I started with WPS a year ago, we were bringing managers into the office a few days a week. And just this fall, we started bringing all exempt employees in 2 days a week. Our IT team comes in 3 days a week. So our return to office initiative has actually been pretty fun. We're having a potluck today, which is something that's like, oh, how pre-pandemic. I'm pretty excited about it. The other thing that we are focusing on is really consolidating our state footprint. So prior to the pandemic, we, operated in a number of different states. Currently, we have employees in over 20 states. But as we all know, there are many state-specific regulations, sometimes large city-specific regulations, and it's really tough to stay on top of all of that compliance. So we are a Wisconsin-based company. Our primary focus is to hire roles here when we can. But then we are really looking if we have a state with 5 or fewer employees, we are no longer going to be recruiting in that state unless there's a strong business case. And really, this is just a focus on streamlining operations.
That totally makes sense, and have fun with your potluck today. That sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Michelle, how has Fendorf engaged remote employees? And also, you've got a lot of those deskless workers in your workforce. How are you providing flexibility to that workforce?
Yeah, so I loved that term because that is a large portion of our workforce are those deskless workers. So we do have some hybrid employees, but I would say a majority of our teams are really based either on a job site or at an office. And an approach that we've really taken with flexibility, while maybe we don't have 5 days a week remote employees, is that we want to meet employees where they're at in their phase of life, right? Because if you look at somebody that maybe is fresh out of school or fresh out of their apprenticeship, what they need with regards to flexibility might be different than somebody that is in the thick of parenthood or in the throes of trying to take care of aging parents. And so we're really trying to focus on helping our leaders best navigate all of the differences that our employees bring and meet them where they're at that phase of life. I would say, the potlucks, right? So we do a lot of engagement activities. So this week we have our kind of Halloween, costume party. We do a chili cook-off, which is super competitive. We're really competitive around here, but all in good fun. We do our annual Olympics, and we really try and encourage both field and office participation for those, just because there's not a ton of opportunities to always mix our employee population. So.
Those are all great examples. And also it shows that it just doesn't happen. It requires that we organize things and we create events, and we can engage others in helping us with that. But those are all fantastic examples of bringing people together, and also talking about flexibility and how it's different amongst generation, I think is a really important consideration. So I'm now going to move to the topic of retention and total rewards differentiation. Excuse me, Kim. What elements of total rewards beyond pay are making the biggest difference in retention right now?
For us, like I mentioned before, there's that compression issue that we're kind of still dealing with when we get to this topic as well. But looking at things beyond just the base pay, so premiums or bonuses. And one example would be we established an efficiency bonus for productivity as compared to goal. But that efficiency bonus also has an attendance piece to it. So if someone is late, even just 1 minute punching in on the clock, then they're exempt from receiving that efficiency bonus. So it's a team goal, and therefore, it impacts the group, the team, the individual, and has so many different elements to it. So I think that's been a real positive a change for us as far as total compensation and rewards. Also, I think just making sure that managers are very clear about identifying how that bonus or how that that carrot basically is earned. I think you can cover it with new employees and say it once and think you have it covered. But I think making sure that you are reviewing it and showing how the metrics all calculate and how they're earning that on a regular basis, that's really key. Because if they don't understand it, then it's not a benefit to them, or it's not that extra enhancement to them. So making sure that happens as well.
Those are all, again, great examples. And I think it's a good example of how you can incent a behavior. And if you identify something that's super important and you incent for it, that behavior typically changes. So those are some neat examples. I'm going to move on to the topic of leadership development, since that came in as our number 3 challenge. And Patty, at WPS, what leadership competencies do you think are going to be most critical for 2026 and beyond?
Yeah. So I think the ones I'm going to list are important in any context, but they add to me an additional dimension when we think about how we may or may not be using AI in our various contexts across all different kinds of businesses. First, leading change, whether it's a revolution or evolution, it is always going to be there. And one of the things I'm really focused on into 26 is how do we routinize change and just support, like, we need to normalize it because it's always going to happen. Fostering a culture of curiosity. So again, this is how can we make things better? How can we do things differently? Is there something else I need to learn to enhance the types of things I'm doing? Think about a frontline employee who's this is wackadoodle. I don't like doing this one thing, and they have ideas to help improve process. So that is something I always want to be promoting in an organization and something that leaders can actually cultivate. And then a third one I would say is relationship building. And this is not just with your team, it's also creating that coalition of support amongst peers for large projects or things happening in the organization. But with this new dimension, it's also helping a team manage the relationship with a machine. So it's that, how are we thinking through how we're leveraging AI in our relationship to AI in our day-to-day jobs?
Wow, you're thinking about a lot of different things and really forward focused, which I think is so important because that's the life we're going to live. So great examples. Well, I have one final question, and it's a question I'm going to ask all three panelists. So I'm going to start with Michelle. And my question is, what is one piece of advice, and if you want to give more than one, that's okay, that you would give an HR leader as they look towards 2026?
Yeah, I love this question, and I'm going to kind of steal a little bit of what Patty started to say, I think, and she talked about change and evolution or revolution, right? It's here to stay. I think the one piece of advice I would give is find your people, build your network. There are so many great ideas and an abundance of support for the people doing the most supporting in an organization. And I think, you could read studies and they all say that, there's a couple of very lonely positions in an organization, and that's HR and the top of the org chart, right? Our CEO or president. And it's really important that you feel supported in what you're doing. And as you go through those evolutions or revolutions, to know that other people are also going through that too. There's comfort in that. And chances are, if you're embarking on something in your organization, somebody has already done it. They're working on it too, or they're going to be doing it. So the more that you can lean into, build and lean into that support network of HR professionals, the better off you'll be.
A great answer. Thank you very much. Patty, you want to share your answer to the question as one piece of advice, and you can give more. Would you give HR leaders as they look towards 2026?
Yeah, mine is actually two. One, especially based on the survey results related to AI, make sure your company has a strategy for AI. It may not be your job, but you should definitely influence that it's happening. And this could be everything from acceptable use, privacy, prompting strategies. We in HR probably have responsibility for training. And so it's making sure that people are using things the right way, but also people are leveraging things in a way where they get the most benefit for them. The second thing related to change is do not skimp on change management. If you are working in an organization that maybe does not have a mature change practice, that's okay. There are business benefits for implementing change management that can really improve the outcomes of projects. So if you need to create a business case, do so. To Michelle's point, you probably have a colleague who's done it if you haven't. And then finally, just do what you can to routinize change because we're never done.
Great advice. Thank you very much, Patty. And Kim, what advice would you give to an HR leader as they look towards 2026?
Sure. I had two ideas for this as well. My first one is to invest in your managers and supervisors. So many of the surveys that we look at and feedback we get says that employees leave your company because of their manager or their supervisor. It's not all the time, but it plays a part somewhere. So make sure your managers are selling your business, are supporting your business, and people ultimately love their managers so much that they just wouldn't even want to leave. So, figure out a way to teach them how to lead and coach, and then ultimately help you navigate change. Change is the scary piece. And I think we've all mentioned something to do with change management, throughout the day here. My last one is then also make sure that you align HR with the business strategy, making sure that you ask to be part of the operations meetings, you ask to be part of the business decisions instead of, just staying in your HR world. Ultimately find ways to add value to the business as a whole, and being invited to participate in maybe those non-traditional HR issues. I just think that there's so many ways that we can add value, that maybe we are, don't always wait to be asked, and just jump in there and get involved.
Another great answer. And as we all think about enabling the human potential within our organizations, I think I just want to thank our three panelists, Michelle, Patty, and Kim. And you can tell that as we go across industries, what we are facing is very similar as leaders in terms of our strategies, and we must be proactive. So if we did not answer one of your questions today, feel free to email us at qti@qtigroup.com, and we will make sure that we get the answers to you. Also, a copy of the slides and the recording will be available in email to all attendees. And I just want to thank you so much. Thank you for attending today. Thank you for those who participated in our survey. Thank you to our panelists, and I hope you all have a great day, especially Patty with your potluck going on today. Enjoy. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day.